This conference will now be recorded.
Let's welcome Mark Edwards. He played for the University of Notre Dame at fullback under Lou Holtz from 95 to 96, or not, no, 90,
93 to 96.
93 to 96. And thank you for joining us, Mark. We appreciate it.
Love talking Notre Dame football with the season being upon us right now. I'm getting really fired up. So I can't wait to beat up on Big Blue opening ball game. I was there for the 37-0 game. I still think it's 37 because that penalty when they ran back that interception was baloney. But I was there for that last Michigan game. I'm looking forward to something similar this opening ball game.
Awesome.
Are you going to go to the game, Mark?
I will not be going to the Michigan game this year. I'm coaching my son's Pop Warner Mighty Might team this year. He's 8. So it makes it difficult to get away a little bit, but I do plan on attending the Pitt game. I've been on the board of the Monogram Club, the former Letter Winners Club there at Notre Dame for the past 4 years, and I'm staying on as a consultant for football. So I'll be back for the meeting for Pitt weekend. And because it's the 25th anniversary of the game of the century in 93, which was my freshman year, which I played a minor role in, they want as many of us back for the Notre Dame Florida State game in November when it gets cold up there. And I'm a Florida boy now, so I've gotten soft. But I'll be back for the Florida State most likely as well.
Very cool. So, Mark, were you always a Notre Dame fan? I mean, did you grow up an Irish fan, or how did that whole thing come
As a matter of fact, I did not. First of all, I didn't even know where Notre Dame was. I grew up in Cincinnati, and you always heard Notre Dame. I didn't know it was in my neighboring state of Indiana, a small 4 hours away. But I was actually I was rooting against Notre Dame. When I was in 8th and 9th grade, that was 88, 89, when they went on, the 24-game win streak, national title, all that other stuff. And I kind of got sick of hearing about how good Notre Dame was. It was kind of like the New York Yankees effect. And in 89, when we went down to play Miami, I was actually cheering against Notre Dame. I was rooting for the Hurricanes to beat them. So I was celebrating after that game. But fast forward a couple of years. All right. I'm having some success in high school as a young player. And then Notre Dame starts recruiting me. And I start kind of looking at the benefits of going to University of Notre Dame for a player like myself. I know I'm going to graduate. I know I'm going to get a great education and be put right into a great alumni association. I know I'm going to be playing for, a national title in my 4 years. I'm going to be playing competitive. I know every game's going to be on TV. And on top of that, the offense that Holtz ran was perfect for a guy like me. I was a big tailback in high school. I put up a bunch of yards. But the fullback position under Holtz was more of an athletic position. It wasn't just a big blocking back. I got to catch the ball and run the ball and still do the blocking. So when I started putting all these pieces of the puzzle together, it became a no-brainer for me where, Notre Dame was definitely the place for me. And funny enough, right after I committed and signed in February of my senior year, I was looking back on through a box of old folders and things like that I had in school, and I pulled one out that I had written Notre Dame sucks on it. So that's my year. But like I said, once again, I saw the light. I saw the benefits, and I became a believer. And to this day, I still bleed blue and gold.
Where would you have gone if you didn't go to Notre Dame?
Probably Penn State would have been number 2 for me.
Okay.
I was Mr. Football in Ohio my senior year of high school, but Ohio State just wasn't a good fit for me. John Cooper was there at the time. Eddie George would have been the tailback. He was a year ahead of me, but Ohio State's offense just wasn't the right fit for an athletic fullback. They had a kid named Nicky Sualua who was their fullback, and he was a really good player. I think he was like a 4th round, 5th round draft pick, but he was, 260, 265-pound blocking mule. And that's what they would have tried to turn me into at Ohio State, and that just wasn't right for me. And, just Penn State was a little bit better of a fit from a fullback perspective. They've had, some good athletic fullbacks run through there. But, I took visits to Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and I took one to the hometown, Cincinnati Bearcats. Not because I was going to go there, because they were really bad at that time. They've gotten much more respectable since. But those are my 4 visits. But pretty much, if Lou Holtz offered me, that's where I was going. Period.
Okay.
What was it like being carried off the field in 1995?
I get asked about that a lot, and it's more fun to look back on it, because at the time I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, hey, it's a game. We're having, we beat our big rival USC. That was a year, we beaten them 11 years in a row. We tied them in 94, and in 95, John Robinson came in. It was Keyshawn Johnson's senior year. They were coming to South Bend. I think they were 7-0 and number 5 in the country, and we lost a couple early games, but we were ranked in the teens, so we were still pretty good. And that was the year they were supposed to finally beat us, and they came into South Bend on a chilly October afternoon, and we just really put it to them. And, after the game, it was one of those, the students come out of the stands type of game, and everybody just celebrating, having a good time. It was our first really big win since Florida State in 93. So, just kind of, you got caught up in the atmosphere, and, next thing we're just all celebrating, and I'm up in the air, and didn't even think anything of it at the time. But as years go by, people have brought that up more and more, and then I realized the significance of it, and it's a really cool trivia fact about me, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you had a really cool play in that game. I mean, wasn't it a 2-point conversion? You threw the ball to Paulus?
Yeah. We had they would put me at tailback on the 2-point conversion play, where they would toss me the ball like, the 240-pound fullback's ever going to run a sweep, right? But I ran out to the right, and my initial target was Derek Mays, who was pretending to block on the far right-hand side, and he was covered. So then all of a sudden I scramble back to my left, and somebody stops me, and I scramble to my right, and then I scramble back to my left, and Paulus was covered. And then I start running. There's 3 guys in front of me and 1 guy on Ron. The guy on Ron comes forward, and so there's 4 guys 3 or 4 guys chasing me, and all they do is kind of shot putted it over to him, and it never should have been complete, that's for darn sure, but a very fun, memorable play.
So would you say that was like your most memorable game at Notre Dame, or what would you classify as like your, most impactful or memorable game?
Between that, the USC game in 95 and the Boston College game, which I think was 2 weeks later for me, those were kind of my 2 signature games that I really remember the most about. Boston College was very, very significant because they'd beaten us in 93 to basically strip away the national title from us. And then in 94, we were going to we played at Boston College, and this was supposed to be our big revenge game, and they just absolutely shellacked us. That's when Mike Mamula got like 7 sacks on Paulus or something like that. So 95, it was a very physical game. We only threw the ball 10 times that game. We just ran right down their throat the entire game. The score was only 20-10, and we didn't, it was a 1-score game still in the 4th quarter, but the score wasn't really indicative of how much we physically dominated them offensively. That was my only 100-yard game of my career, and I had 168 yards rushing. I had a bunch of 80 and 90-yard type of games, but the Boston College game was the only 100-yard rushing game that I had. Whereas I think the USC game was probably my best all-around game. I had 40-some yards receiving. It's 80, 90 yards rushing. They said threw for a 2-point conversion, ran for a 2-point conversion, and then had a couple touchdown runs as well. So it was both those games were very memorable for me.
What was it like playing for Coach Holtz?
As the years go by, I like Coach Holtz more and more. You don't always appreciate him that much when he's yelling and screaming at you when you're out there. But his philosophy, in my opinion, in my experience, was that he puts so much pressure on you in practice, specifically as a young player that's playing, that come game time, it's easier for you. I just remember going to practice, heading over to practice, dreading what was going to happen because I knew he was going to yell and scream and belittle me and send me down to scout team a couple of times. And I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen. He was such a perfectionist. And, if I was in my stance and I was supposed to take a lead step, and instead I took a crossover step first, regardless of the result of the play, he was down the field yelling, screaming, and making sure that you did things the right way, the way he wanted you to do them. So you really don't appreciate Holtz when you're going through there because you're just trying not to get embarrassed and yelled at and belittled. But as the years go by, you appreciate the lessons that he taught you more and more.
He made it so when you went to a game, it was a hell of a lot easier than it was going to practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, the games were fun because, I only remember him really yelling one game, and that was my freshman year in '93 when we were big favorites versus Purdue. This was, before the Joe Tiller Purdue days when we'd beaten them, 20 times in a row or something like that.
Right.
And this was the '93 team who we were we just beaten Michigan a couple of weeks before, and we were top 5 team at that time. We went down to West Lafayette, and it was 0-0 at halftime, and he let into everybody at halftime. Whereas most of the time during the games, he was, X's and O's. We're going to go in, we're going to make adjustments, and he wasn't yelling, screaming, things like that. But it was, hey, let's get this thing straight. Let's game plan. What adjustments do we got to make? But practice, I'll tell you what, you didn't want to step the wrong way. Now, it got better as a junior and senior, where he wasn't yelling and screaming as much at you, but he always let you have it a couple times a year just so you remembered who was boss.
That's cool.
With the fear of God in you.
Absolutely. It was no fun, man. I just, just dreaded going over to practice. I dragged my feet and just like I get over there, you just didn't want to go. And that's just because you knew he was just going to be ridiculed and belittled. And oh my gosh, he like I said, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew it was going to be something.
Yeah.
How did he prepare you for life, after college?
Well, it was always, everybody's heard him speak, right? So, it was about being held accountable. It was about doing things the right way. It was about, being a good person, not only a good football player, but being a good all-around person. Really, really emphasize the golden rule, do unto others as you would want them to do to you. But, there was just so many life lessons about, being a better man, being a better father, and preparing us for those kind of roles.
Awesome. Thank you.
Quick question, Mark. DJ Powers here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Did Lou counter his aggressiveness in practice with the motivational uplift to balance the scale, so to speak, to make you want to give him more?
I think that's fair. Yeah. But the motivation came, Friday, from Friday afternoon, Saturday. It was almost like beginning of the week. He would tell you how bad you were, and there's no way in the world you can beat 0-6 Purdue, right? And then by Thursday and Friday, all of a sudden, you're a world beater. So it's almost like he breaks you down earlier in the week to build you back up towards the end of the week, and come Friday night, Saturday morning, you're ready to run through a wall.
Yeah, that's what I thought I remembered of him when he was coaching. Not necessarily at Notre Dame, because I know he employed a different tactics when he did that. But when he was at other schools, he kind of used the military's version of, as you just mentioned, break it down to build you up. That's exactly how that works. And
That's very accurate. Specifically for the games where we were big favorites, which
yeah,
95% of the game, especially 93, 95, 96, we were normally favorites. 94 and towards the end of the year, we were big dogs. And when we were big favorites, he convinced you that, Purdue was a top 10 program at the time. Our Navy was a top 10 program. And by the end of the week, you were good. But he had a little bit of reverse effect when we were the underdogs. We were against Florida State in '93. He told us how good we were all week. Still worked us to death, but told us how good we were.
perfect psychology, I think. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Well, yeah, it worked on us back, back in those times. We were a different kind of athlete. I'm not sure it'll work that well in today's game with today's athlete. But these kids growing up, telling them how good they are from the time they're 5-6 years old. So we were definitely a different generation of players.
Getting participation trophies as opposed to first, second, and third place. Yeah.
I'm not on that bandwagon, and my son is not going to be getting any participation trophies.
Good for you.
Mine hasn't gotten any either.
Yeah.
Mark, was it hard to balance the academics along with having to play such a high caliber of football at Notre Dame?
First semester freshman year, it was a big transition. Going specifically leading up to that first exam for the first exam that you would do for a particular professor, because you had to get. First of all, you had to get used to college life in general. It's different than high school where, hey, everything's very regimented. And you see every teacher every day, whereas in college, you're seeing a teacher every other day, for a couple hours, and you have a little bit more free time in the afternoon. But what I found was after freshman year that during the football season, I did better academically because things were more regimented. I had less time to waste, therefore I didn't waste time. Whereas in the winter semester, second semester, I thought I had more time, so I ended up wasting more time, and I struggled a little more. Not that I struggled, but I found it more difficult academically in the off season than I did during the season.
Do you think the high academic standards at Notre Dame are a detriment for recruiting?
I think it's a detriment, and it's a detriment for certain kids, and it helps for certain kids. It just depends on the kid. And the kids that it's a detriment to are not the kids we want at Notre Dame anyway, or not the kids that are going to succeed at Notre Dame. For a while there, Notre Dame was very, very difficult to get the kids that struggled a little bit academically, but were good kids that should be there and that would fit in there, and that were trending in the right direction. Because you had some kids like Chris Zorich and Tony Rice who were Prop 48 guys. They ended up being very good, very, very successful academically at Notre Dame. And for a while there, in the late 90s through the maybe 2000, mid 2000s, whatever, Notre Dame wouldn't even take a look at a kid like that. And I think now we're back to where we're going to give those kids an opportunity now. I go back a lot, and I work in the Monogram, or I'm part of the board of the Monogram Club, and we talk a lot with, director of player development and at Notre Dame, who's an old teammate of mine, Ron Paulus. And he's like, look, we can get some of the kids in that are lower academics, but are trending upwards, and they're the right fit for Notre Dame. We can get more of those kids in now than we were able to in the 90s. But once again, you got to make sure it's the right kind of kid, because you just don't want to get a kid that's unbelievable athlete that loves Notre Dame that's going to get there and not be able to handle it. You know, there's so many things that the team does, that the university does for these student athletes now, that, you know, they know the right type of kid to get in there, that whether he's going to succeed or not, you know, based upon just the type of kid that he is. And they do a better job of that now, I think.
Do you have a personal opinion why Lou left the Irish? And I don't know, did he take a year or two off and then went to South Carolina? Why he left the Irish? Could it be Worth, new athletic director that changed?
There was probably a combination of things. You know, I don't know. I've been out golfing with him and dinner with him a few times since I've graduated, and I've never asked that question. But, you know, my personal feeling is, you know, it had a little bit to do with the, you know, new AD at the time. I think he got some of his privilege, not, I don't want to say privileges, but some of the, I guess I want to say flexibility taken away from him to get some of those kids like Tony Rice and Chris Zorich. That was taken away from him, made it a little difficult. And I think, you know, he'd been there for, you know, 10 years, 11 years, whatever it was. And, you know, maybe he was a little burned out.
Right.
It taken its toll on him. And I think he needed to recharge the batteries, you know, kind of like, you know, when Urban left Florida, you know, it's real stressful. You know, not that I really want to, you know, bring that whole Ohio State thing up right now, but, you know, it was similar. It was similar, yeah. Similar to, he was burnt out of Florida. You know, he had to take a couple of years to recharge the batteries. I think Holtz did that. When he recharged his batteries, he realized he still had a lot left, still had a lot of passion for the game, and went back and turned another program around. South Carolina.
I've got an idea that you might be able to shed some light on, Mark, that I think another underlying reason why Coach Holtz left was he did not want to be the number one coach name at the university. When he got his 100th victory, he knew he was going to get it. He was a man who had that 100 item list, bucket list, if you will.
Yep.
They were popular. And one of them was to coach at Notre Dame. But he put in parentheses, I believe when he wrote his bucket list, yes, he wanted to coach there, but he didn't want to supplant Knute Rockne and the likes of, if you will. Is there any? Do you think there's any?
Not, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all very, very prideful, and regardless of how much he loves Notre Dame, you know, selfishly, I would want my name on top. You know,
Yeah.
but he may feel very differently about that. Once again, that's another thing I've never really asked him about. You know, it's because those are all difficult personal things, and you know, maybe it's better nobody knows.
Yeah, you just got to ask at the right time. You know, when he misses that clutch putt, that's a good time to ask.
You know what I'm going to ask him? I'm going to ask him to leave me this in his will. But have you guys ever seen his newspaper trick? He grabs his newspaper and he's sitting there talking. He's ripping it up. USA Today, he's ripping it up, and he's doing some kind of motivational talk, right? And he's ripping it up as he's doing it, and he's ripping it up. He rips it like 5 or 6 times, and he's just talking and talking. Then all of a sudden, he just pops it back, and it's all back together. And I've seen him do it 5 or 6 times. I'm sure you can YouTube it. All right. You guys need to do this. And he's ripping this thing up, and he does that as he's talking to, you know, football teams and motivational talking and things like that. And, you know, I'm going to, a matter of fact, you know, the next day or two, I'm going to email him and say, hey, you know what? I want you to leave this to me in your will. Just tell me how the heck you've done this.
That's classic. I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Seriously, look at you can find him somewhere on YouTube. I don't know what you got to type in, but, you know, the Lou Holtz newspaper trick or something. But it's really cool.
I'm sure we could probably find it.
That's right.
I've got that on my bucket list now.
Have you been to the stadium after all the renovations have been done?
Absolutely. Because I've been on the board of the Monarch Crab Club the last few years, I was getting the behind the scenes tours as construction was going on. So, our last meeting, we went through all the academic and all the support areas that not only they have for the students, but the student athletes as well. I mean, the place is just unbelievable. It's the stadium itself is like its own city now.
Right.
With all the new suites, the new club seats, it's really amazing what they've been able to do and how that's changed from the original house that Rockney built that pretty much I was in, to the first expansion and the second expansion now, and it's the big screen. Once again, it was something that was needed. I don't like the field turf. Historically, I don't like the big screen, but because of today's athlete and what they want and what they're looking for, it was a necessary upgrade for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Interesting also how they kept all the history intact.
As much as they can,
original
absolutely. I mean, the innards are still there. The original structure is still there, but it's got a hell of a facelift everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The bathroom, the men's bathrooms, Megan, really needed to go as well. They still had the old troughs there,
So
so
did the
they
women's.
upgraded.
So did the women's. Trust me, they were terrible. So it was a really awesome upgrade.
Yes, the bathrooms now. But you know what? Now that we don't have the troughs and you're not, shoulder to shoulder with everybody, you kind of miss it a little bit.
It is exciting.
You're sitting there pissing and you can hear it on the radio yes, in the bathroom.
That's right.
I'm leaving that alone.
So, Mark, you played with Denson. Were you not surprised? Were you surprised to see him kind of move into a coaching role at Notre Dame? I mean, did you always kind of foresee that with him, or what was your perspective on that?
You know what? He was 2 years behind me. So, I was kind of leading him in the backfield. So I'm going to take all the credit for his development since he left the University of Notre Dame. And I always tell him, when we're back for different events, he's always introduced as Notre Dame's all-time leading rusher. And I'm like, hey, son, you wouldn't be that without me in there, all right? So I rib him a little bit. But he was always, a good, smart, motivated kid. I say kid. I mean, he's 2 years behind me, but young man, and you never know where people are going to go. I mean, we didn't talk about him becoming a coach or anything like that, but it doesn't surprise me a bit where he's at, and it wouldn't surprise me if any Notre Dame kid, comes out to be a successful coach or attorney or doc. I mean, anything. Once again, we were talking about a little bit earlier. You just don't let anybody in Notre Dame, even if you're a tremendous athlete. You got to be the right fit, the right type of kid, right type of young person, and they don't miss very often. I mean, they miss every now and then, but they don't miss very often.
Did you ever consider coaching or going into broadcasting or anything like that?
I did. I've missed the game a little bit, well, a lot. People ask me what I miss, about playing the pros, and I was like, well, I miss Sundays and I miss payday, but but I don't miss getting the crap beat out of me and waking up, not be able to turn my head from side to side without shooting pains. I don't miss that part of it, but I do miss the competition. I did consider getting into coaching once I got finished with my NFL career, but I chose my family over coaching, because if you become a coach, you can still have a family life, but if your son's playing Pop Warner on a Saturday afternoon and your Notre Dame's playing on Saturday afternoon, guess where you're going to be? You're going to be at, it's very difficult to get to all your family events. and if you're sick, what do? Well, you go in to the facility because that's where the doctors are. So there are no sick days. There are no days. Hey, my daughter has a ballet recital on a Saturday night, and we're away at Boston College. Well, I got to miss. So that's mainly the reason I didn't get into coaching. That and the fact that typically you're going to be moving every 2 or 3, 4 years unless you get in a really good situation. And you're really going to be moving a lot if you want to move upwards in coaching, become a head coach. And, just Holtz. I mean, he coached, 6 different colleges. Urban Meyer, coached Bowling Green, Utah, Florida. I mean, it's all over the place. And the reason I keep bringing Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was receiver coach my senior year at Notre Dame. So, obviously he's a Notre Dame guy as well. But,
That's right.
But even like Charlie Strong was there. I mean, Charlie's been all over the place as an assistant and a head coach, and Texas and now USF, and it's my kids pretty much got to grow up in Jacksonville, Florida. We got here when my oldest was 4, and now she's a sophomore at the University of Kentucky playing soccer. So the kids got to grow up here in the same spot. They have their friends all the way through, and there's something to be said for that as well. I would certainly love coaching. I think I'd be very good at it because the only reason I was able to play 9 years in the NFL was because I did not make mental mistakes. I wasn't the biggest, fastest, or strongest guy, but I was always in the right position. I knew where I had to get in order to put myself in the right position, to get a block coming, blitzing linebacker off the edge or a blitzing corner or something like that. So I think I would be good. I would enjoy it, but I would miss out on a lot of other things. And that's why ultimately I never went into coaching.
Sure.
You think you could win 1 out of 16 games in the NFL?
Well, Cleveland is a former team of mine, so I'll leave that one alone.
I think I could win 1 out of 16. Hey, question, Mark. I'm going to revert back to something you mentioned. Chronic pain, any associated chronic pain from the multitude of hits you've taken in college and professional level sports?
Yes, there is. I was pretty fortunate throughout my playing career in that I never had any major injuries. I had an MCL my senior year at Notre Dame. It healed on its own. I had an MCL in my 9 years in the pros, and lots of little bumps and bruises and little things, but no surgeries or anything like that. I never missed a game in my professional playing career due to injury. Now that said, now that I'm 43, almost 44, I do have some neck and low back issues. I have got some injections at times. I find when I stay active and I'm working out, not that I'm working out anything like I used to, but when I just do, some basic, basic beach workouts, some cardio, I feel a heck of a lot better. A lot of stretching, a lot more hot tub to loosen things up. It definitely helps with neck and low back issues, but knees, ankles, everything else, shoulders are in pretty good shape. But I am concerned moving forward that there's eventually going to have to be a surgery on the neck or the low back to get things right.
One of the reasons I brought that up is my field of play, if you will, is in functional wellness, functional medicine. And we just got done promoting and putting on an international summit about stem cells. And now that they're being welcomed into the States, a lot of people are going to Texas for a day, for example, and solve a lifelong problem.
Interesting enough, I was at an NFL PA gathering about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and one of the guys there, they brought in a guy local in Jacksonville that they do the stem cell research, or they're using that technology. Right yet, obviously, I'm super interested in doing something like that, trying something like that, but at the same time, I don't want to drop 10 grand or whatever to do it. But That said, if that's going to heal everything up, then that's something that I would definitely look into.
Well, our comparison, for example, over the long haul, if you were to go and utilize traditional and conventional medicine,
Mhm.
you would pay a hell of a lot more than 10 grand annually.
Yeah.
And if you get, there's different ways to get the stem cell. You probably know as much as I do about it then.
Mm.
You could extract your fat stem cells and harvest them, and they'd be available. And the younger you get them, the better they are. So to speak.
Right.
So yeah, you can inject yourself with 40-year-old stem cells when you're 80 and feel like you're 60, I guess, physically. So
Hey,
Sign me up.
yeah, I mean, everybody, you're going to be hearing about. Everybody here is going to be hearing an awful lot about it because
yeah. One of the things I have been meaning to do is through the NFL, they do have a spine program where they will set you up with doctors and things like that. And I am curious to see if they're including the stem cell technology in that program yet. And it's been on my mind to give them a call, and you bringing that back up has motivated me to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will, if not by anything other than pressure, because the NBA's currently adopting it.
That's right. When Kobe goes over to Europe, that's what he was doing, right?
Yes. He
Yeah.
went to Europe. Tiger Woods went to Panama, for example, the first time he did it.
Yep.
Then he had his other knee treated in Europe. And now that we've gotten it done in Texas, and Texas has legislated it and passed the law, then you can get it in Texas. You don't have to go overseas anymore. So you save that $5,000 round trip, if you will.
Nice.
So yeah. And for example, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Thurl Bailey, retired NBA basketball player. He's 54 years old, I think. I think he was 56 years old. I think he's 2 years my junior. And he slam dunked on me 3 times playing one-on-one. This is just a week and a half ago. So,
Nice.
and he's had stem cells in his knees. And
Wow. Well, hey, good information.
Totally. So, Mark, I want to ask you, what do you think of Brian Kelly, first and foremost? And what do you expect from this season?
I'm a Brian Kelly fan. He's been there for a very long time, and outside of the one bad year a couple years ago, he's been consistent. It's tougher. Not that I accept it, but I realize it's tougher to win at Notre Dame now and get the top recruits here now than it was, in the 80s and 90s, when every Catholic kid in the country wanted to go to Notre Dame, when Notre Dame was the only program on TV, every single week. Every kid can get watched at every school, even MAC schools now. Their parents can watch them, stream them every single time they're out on the field now. So it's Notre Dame's not the sell that it was at one time. So that being said, Brian Kelly has been in the hunt, with two or three of the past 4 years. 2012. Really, last year I thought we were better than we were in 2012. 2012 we went undefeated, but we skated by. We pounded some people last year. I mean, embarrassed them. And then you had the Miami meltdown, which just ugly all around. Yeah. But no, I'm a Brian Kelly fan. I like what he's doing. Recruiting has gone well.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. This year, I think, is there's just a ton of potential this year, and a lot of it centers around quarterback. If the quarterback come out and play, I was down the field 2 years ago for the spring game, and he was the most electrifying. Wimbush. He was the most electrifying player on the field. He was the fastest. Faster than our DBs. The guy can move better than anybody I've seen in a long time. And somehow or another, last year he got the yips with his passing. Early in the year, he looked good, and he got the yips, and it was just in his head. And then he couldn't even complete a pass in the flat almost. So defense returns. I mean, just so much talent. Offense returns so much talent. Even the offensive line, losing McGlinchey and Nelson, we basically got 4 starters coming back because the tackles rotated, right? We got a great offensive line coming back. We always got good tight ends, and this year the receivers are they're enormous. And I think running back, you're always going to be good at running back if your offensive line's solid. So it doesn't matter who's back there, but we got some talent back there as well. So I think it really hinges on Wimbush, and if Wimbush comes out and plays like he's capable of, we're gonna be in the hunt for the Final Four, absolutely. So I'm really, really excited about what we have. But what we need is to have that good run to the Final Four, and then consistently, and that's just what we haven't had. We haven't had the consistency over the years.
Sure.
And we always, we'll have high hopes, and then be an 8-5 season, a couple close, disappointing losses. We need to be able to get over that hump, and I feel good about this year's team doing that.
How do you feel about the schedule this year? The November schedule.
Uh-oh.
The schedule looks daunting, but until things play out, you really don't know. Florida State could be an average team. Michigan could be an average team. They got they got a lot of returning players. They got talent, everything else, but injuries, cohesion. You never know.
Go ahead.
Oh, but Notre Dame's got to play a schedule like that in order to win over the voters, because we're not in the conference and don't have a conference championship game and things like that. I like that Notre Dame plays an incredibly daunting schedule every year. You can slip up in one game and still make the Final Four because you're playing a handful of top 25 teams every single year, and even teams that aren't necessarily in the top 25. Navy has been a borderline top 25 team every year. We get them. There's the Virginia Techs of the world. They playing these ACC schools every year. One of those schools is going to be a lot better than we thought, and maybe one isn't going to be. So there's always going to be good competition. I like it. It makes every week interesting. When you go out and you play against a Temple or something like that, some weeks it's not that interesting of a game when you're winning 49-10. So, granted, you need some of those as well. You need a little breather from time to time, but those are built in the schedule as well.
I mean, traveling coast to coast.
No, Notre Dame needs that as far as the schedule goes, because we do recruit nationally. So
I understand.
That's why we do that. That's why we're always going to have a game on the West Coast. That's very important because we get a handful of kids from California and Washington or Oregon or something like that every year. I think that's it's good for the players as well. You get to see different places. I played at USC. I played at the University of Washington. I played at Air Force Academy. I played at BYU. Those were all interesting places to see, different places to see, and great experiences. Seeing those fans, that atmosphere. The travel. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that daunting on the players.
Also not new.
A 4.5 hour flight, direct flight. You don't have to go on a layover or anything like that. So it's not that daunting travel, but I think we get rewarded pretty significantly with the exposure because of that.
Yeah, it's nothing new either for the Irish to travel. It's not like it's something different.
mean, we
Oh, yeah.
always play USC, so
Well,
you
shoot,
know.
they heck, in the new Rodney days, they trained all the way out there.
Good
But I,
point. Good point. You know.
but I, okay, I'm looking at the schedule now. Navy, that's in San Diego, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Then to Northwestern in Chicago.
Yes.
It's like a
Then
home game.
Florida State, South Bend,
Yes.
Syracuse, Yankee Stadium, and then USC.
Yes.
I mean, I
So it's
understand. I've been following the Irish since 1966, and I understand traveling.
Yeah.
But that,
Every year, we play in New York. It seems like every year, there's usually a game in Texas, as well as every year. There's always a West Coast trip, either Stanford or USC. So, instead of going to Texas this year, we're going to San Diego. I don't think it's another hour and a half, 2 hours flight, and that's really about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just one of those, two more time zones, not a big deal.
Yeah. Matter of fact, to put emphasis on the traveling to New York, for example, they say the second largest student body for Notre Dame is up in New York,
Alumni.
other than South Bend. So what other school, can you think of that gives accolades to their alumni and puts it on a powerful schedule like the Irish do? And more often than not, it doesn't scar them in any way, shape, or form. So it just strengthens.
I got to go to Dublin, Ireland my senior year. That was the first year we did the Shamrock. Well, it wasn't called the Shamrock, series, but that was the first time we played in Dublin. So that was a great experience. And then there've been some years that we've gone out and played in Hawaii. As a Notre Dame player, you're going to get to experience a lot of different places, and those significant trips like that. It's not just football. I mean, yes, it's a business trip. You're there to win a football game, but you get to experience a little bit of the town, the culture, different cities and things like that. The USC game out there, there's, at least I believe it still is this way, but there was always breakfast the morning after. It was always, Thanksgiving. It's always Thanksgiving weekend, and you have a breakfast with the Notre Dame Club of Orange County after the morning after the game. So, when we went to Dublin, we got to drive around the countryside and see the castles and the land and things like that. We got to experience downtown Dublin. And then after the game, we got to have a little bit of fun with some Guinness as well. So it all worked out well.
Guinness. Awesome.
Never go wrong there.
Significant lifelong event. That's what those are. I love it.
So, Mark, tell us what you've been up to since. We know, of course, let's mention the Super Bowl ring and all, with the Patriots. So, congratulations to you. But what have you been up to? Post NFL, post football.
Well, I about 2000, a couple of years after I got out, I was, still trying to figure out what I was going to do once I grew up and got done playing football. And I toiled around in insurance and financial industry stuff, but found out that wasn't for me very quickly. 2010, through a fellow Notre Dame alumni, I got connected with forklift telemetry. Basically, I work in a field where I install safety systems on forklifts. I have my own little company where me and a couple guys go out and install these little safety systems, kind of like black box type systems. Where
like lockout, tag out.
Yeah, yeah. It makes the operator swipe a card to gain access. If they hit something, it'll alarm. It'll send out emails. It tracks their moving time, their idle time. You do your OSHA safety checks on right at the vehicle. They're all done electronically and all stored on a server. And everything that operator does reports back to a server and can, the end user can view their entire forklift fleet online. So I go out and get my hands dirty.
Megan's a forklift.
All in these things, and
I drive a forklift all day long.
My own little business, and what it does, it affords me the opportunity to plan my work around my kids' sports schedule. So I can be here, for the most part for my kids, my 8-year-old's football games, my 9-year-old's football, on my daughter's soccer. I traveled a ton with my daughter's soccer. And I got different projects, around the country, and I kind of time them conveniently to where I'm going to be up in Lexington when my daughter has a couple soccer games. She plays for the University of Kentucky. So I'm going to, catch a couple games next week. I got a project in Knoxville, which is about, 3 hours south. So I'm going to finish that, head up there, and then stay up there for the weekend. And then I got another project in Ohio. So, I drive around a lot. I'm really not earning unless I am traveling, which is one of the downsides. But it affords me a lot of freedom, and I got a nice, little business.
Very nice.
I work for Amazon. I might
Marc.
have to call you up and might have to do something.
Absolutely.
What games you plan on going to this year?
It's looking like Pitt and FSU. Pitt because the Monogram meetings are that weekend, and Florida State because it's later in the year. Kids' seasons are going to be over with. I'll have a little freedom. Plus, it's the 25th anniversary of the game of the century in 1993, which I participated in. They're trying to get as many of us back that played in that game as possible.
No Stanford?
No. I never say never, because sometimes work will have me up there on, a Friday, and I'll just stay over one more day, hit the game, and then get out of Dodge on Sundays. But it makes it a little more difficult now that I'm coaching my son's Pop Warner team. I really got to try to be there for as many games as possible. The head coach realizes, and I told him beforehand, hey, look, I'm not going to be 100%, but I'll be there as much as I can. And he's like, well, with your background and knowledge, we will take every second of you that we can get.
Awesome. Megan?
I'm good. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything for him?
I do.
Okay.
When you consider the academic challenges, the weather, everybody's on TV now.
Mm-hmm.
Does Notre Dame have any advantage on recruiting now?
They still have a major advantage in recruiting. Yes. Not the advantage we had in the 80s and 90s, in my opinion, 70s, 80s, 90s. Really even the early 2000s. Notre Dame is still a marquee brand. Notre Dame is still, when you got the right kid, is going to be a tremendous fit for those kids who are looking past football. And it's very difficult for an 18-year-old to look past football. When I was 18, all I wanted to do was go play in the pros. But I was a top student in my high school as well. I graduated in number 11 in my class, so I knew academics were important.
Wow.
I knew the alumni connections were going to be important. I knew I was going to graduate. That was important to me. Nobody in my immediate family, had graduated from college, even gone to college for that fact. So those were all very, very important factors for me, which made me the right type of kid for Notre Dame. So for the right type of kids, Notre Dame still has a very, very large advantage. But that recruiting pool is always smaller than the Ohio States and Alabamas of the world that will take any kid. Because, yes, you know what? They stress academics everywhere, okay? But the numbers don't lie. Graduation rates don't lie.
Right.
So, and that's where the kids that go to Notre Dame, the kids that go to Duke, the kids that go to Stanford, the kids that go to Vanderbilt are going to, have that advantage over those other kids later on in life. When we got smashed by Alabama in the national championship game, 2012 season, everybody was giving me a lot of grief. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, those Alabama kids will be lucky if they're working for those Notre Dame kids 15 years from now. So at the end of the day, that's really what's important.
That's awesome.
Bravo. Thank you.
You look,
Thank you. It's anybody else have any questions?
I just want to throw something in about kind of rebuilding up what you just said. The structure of Notre Dame, if you will, academically and athletically across the entire board of sports is a builder of leaders. And not every institution, higher education or otherwise, does that anymore, and never did for a prolonged period of time. And that's why we're able to take the bumps and bruises that come along, either verbally or otherwise, and move on, because you don't judge when you've fallen, you judge getting up. And that is what Notre Dame people do. You can't argue.
But I still keep in almost daily contact with 7, 8 guys that I played and graduated with.
Incredible.
You know, it's a very unique fraternity. I can count 1 or 2 interactions in my entire Notre Dame life that have been unpleasant with fellow Notre Dame people. It's almost non-existent. There's an instant trust. There's an instant bond between fellow Notre Dame graduates, whether you're an athlete or just a student. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's going to take your call. Everybody's going to, do whatever they can to help you. And, it's a very unique fraternity, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
So
Outstanding.
are we. In our little way, so are we. Absolutely. Totally.
And we appreciate you
So
sharing.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Always fun talking about Notre Dame and my experiences there, and always love talking about Notre Dame football. So this was a lot of fun, and we'll do it again sometime.
Please.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark. Good luck
Thank
to
you
your
very
kids at UK.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.